I've embarrassed myself a couple of times now and said, "Oh, hello, Amanda," and the replies, "Oh, it's not Amanda, it's Rachel or whoever." Oh, sorry.
I think most of my colleagues have been called Amanda at some point. I think they're kind of getting used to it now.
Obviously, very professional thing to do, of course. Say hello on radio. In between the landing aircraft. Hi, Helena.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us tonight as well.
That's all right. That's okay. I'm just trying to get comfortable. I'm at my sister's, so
okay. I'll hence you're on your iPhone, aren't you?
Yeah, it keeps slipping down her sofa. I'll get if I disappear. That's where I am. Send help.
Yeah.
We'll let you know if there's any change down there or any snacks.
Right. Yeah, that could be quite handy.
Your sister lives down south as well, Helena?
No, she's up in Olney.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
That's where.
We know that.
I'm at the end of the Olney SID at the moment, yes.
Are they still on 07?
Yep.
They were, yes, as I drove up.
We've had a real run of easterlies. I think I've only seen westerlies out the last couple of months, yeah.
Yeah. It's literally, and it looks like it changes, isn't it? Towards the end of this week, it becomes a southerly again or westerly. But yeah, we've had northeasterlies for several weeks now, haven't we?
It's been a long time.
It's quite unusual. Quite unusual indeed.
Yeah, we'll get used to 07, go back to 25, and that'll be it.
Yeah. You've been working.
Get the hang of.
You've been on the radio today, Helena, Dream?
No. In fact, I was in the simulator for the last couple of days with the Thames UEC. We've got some new people coming through, so this was I don't know if the cat is allowed out. It has to stay there because dogs are the other side. So I think we're staying here, mate. Wait. Yeah, so we've got some new controllers coming through, and they've got a 3-week stint in the simulator before they go on to live training in the ops room. So I was doing that for the last couple of days of my week, and then an off day today. So it's nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll do our usual. We'll have a little bit of a chat while some more people come in. We've got Gershon just joined us from America.
Oh, hello.
Hey, Gershon, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Good to see you. How you keeping well?
Yeah, very, very well, thank you.
I'm just saying
It'll be better when I find a decent flying school, but there's only one flying pig in the world.
Yeah, you nearly got that line just right. There's a slight slip there, but it's all right. No, because you're in Miami, aren't you, Gershon?
I'm in Miami, yes.
You are. And then have you been doing any flying out there yet?
No, no. I found one place which sounds interesting because they do the YASA and the FAA thing, and they can recognize the hours, but they're quite a few miles up the coast. So I'd have to go spend weekends there. So I'm trying to find something more local, but haven't been able to yet.
Oh, okay. You just have to come back to the UK then, won't you, as you said?
That is the other option.
Yep. Come and visit, and we'll do a bit of an intensive stint and get you through.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I'm sorry, everybody. You probably gathered Gershon was learning to fly, but he's got himself married and he's moved out to Miami now.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much.
So it's not quite so easy for him to pop in for lessons now.
No, not really.
He's welcome to join us tonight. Okay, let's have a look. Who have we got? Hello, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Rob, I think you've joined us before, haven't you?
Yeah, I did Met, I think, with you. I found it very useful.
I can't remember whereabouts you are in the world, though.
I'm down in Surrey.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, down in Surrey.
And you fly already, or?
Yeah, well, I'm part way through down at Red Hill Airdrome.
How's it going there? Good?
Yeah, very good.
Managing to avoid Gatwick?
Yes. It's rather close.
It's quite
close. Too close for my liking.
Cool, and Jonathan. Hey, Malcolm, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Hang on, let's try and get the video going.
It all gets very technical.
It does, yeah. Oh, there you go.
There we are, Malcolm.
Yeah, just about made it.
I've got someone keeping me company tonight. I've got Sue here. Look.
Let's have a look. Let's check.
Hi, Sue. Hi, Paul. Got my map in the background though. I don't know if you can how well you can see that. That was a birthday present from everybody that works here, which was very kind for me. It's interactive map that updates with the weather and shows different colours, LEDs, depending on the meter at the time, the wind and the cloud base and those sorts of things.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's really good. It is literally entirely green at the moment.
That'll change.
Yeah, that'll fix it. Yeah, we haven't seen it flashed with the lightning strikes yet, but there's a couple of little flashes. That means it's just over 15 knots. Land's End and down at Dover by the looks of it. Yeah, very cool. It's very good.
I never knew such a thing existed.
It's I don't know. He might join us tonight. It's somebody that joins us on ground school. He doesn't fly with us, but I have flown with him, and he made one for himself. So he's a bit of a whiz with electronics and whatnot. And it's probably one of those classic things. Somebody's seen, oh, I like that. Can you make me one? Oh, okay. And he's sort of starting to turn it into a bit of a cottage industry.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
No, I kind of want one.
It's pretty cool. Yep. We'll see if it updates later. Helena, Amanda, we'll like we've had before, we'll keep it fairly informal tonight and just chat. And if you're happy, then we'll just see where it takes us. If somebody asks a question, if you're okay with that.
Yep,
sure. Yeah.
It's like one question usually leads on to another and so forth. So does anybody want to kick off? Has anybody got a question wants to ask me or Helena or Amanda? Does everybody actually, just let me start from here. Does everybody know Helena and Amanda, first of all?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Helena, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Helena Hughes. I am mainly an air traffic controller based down at Swanwick. That's what pays the mortgage anyway. And then apart from that, I have a CPLA, and I've been a flying instructor for many years. And a few years ago, Paul taught me how to fly the whirly things, which was very good fun. Excuse me, I'm getting over a nasty cold is another thing. And I'm also a fertile and ROCC examiner, and I've just joined a panel of senior fertile examiners to roll out the new process for obtaining your operators licenses. Ooh.
Ooh.
Sorry, what's fertile?
Flight radio telephony operators license.
All right, thank you very much.
There we go. Sorry, my screen went a bit weird at the same time. Yes. So that's my angle on RT basically. I've also written. I wrote the Poolies manual, and I'm in the process of updating all the Q&A books. Is my work for the moment.
Oh, busy.
Yeah, it's manageable.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. And ta-da!
Oh, wow.
Here's one I wrote earlier. Yes.
It's got a new cover, hasn't it? I've not seen that cover before.
Dated that a couple of years ago now, but
I've not seen that before.
Can highly recommend it.
oh, thank you.
It's easy to follow.
Well, my aim was because I think the air pilot manuals are good, but they do sort of, they sort of expand on the subject a little more than is really necessary. So that's sort of meant to be a bit more of an accessible starting point for everything.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? If you look at Cap 413 as a document, as a manual, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It's a great cure for insomnia if you ever.
Yeah, it's got God knows how many hundreds of pages in it, and yes,
and a little bit relevant to the flying that people are doing at the start. So
yeah, I think if you handed that over to somebody, that'll put them off for the beginning.
Oh,
anyone ever
And Amanda, please, introduce yourself.
Right, I'm Amanda Rhodes, air traffic control now for 21 years. Who would have thought it?
Hey.
I know, half my life now, it's crazy. So I do what was known as Essex Radar, validated 2003, so I'm based down at Swanwick with Helena as well. We're now Stansted Radar with New Luton Airspace, and I've been doing Luton Radar since 2005. So we may have spoken in the past. I know Paul and I do on a regular basis. So yeah, that's me.
Hey, when did the call sign change from Essex to Stansted?
24th of February.
I was going to say it must have just been when the holds came in, etc. Was it?
When Luton got its own hold, because when we were working both the Stansted and the Luton traffic, it's, well, you're Essex Radar, you're not just Stansted, because it was confusing people. And now we've gone back to Stansted. It's, yeah, I've got 20 years of Essex Radar in my head. I need to try and shake, and it's really difficult.
I bet everybody still calls up Essex Radar.
They do.
Yeah.
You get Stansted, you get Essex. I've called myself Luton before. It's
Brilliant.
Sometimes it's the first thing that comes out of your mouth. I think, no, I'm Stansted today. So yeah.
Often. Yes. Now you've said something scary, because I've done 30 years now, both at Luton Tower and then down at Swanwick. So you get less for murder, don't you?
You do, actually, yes. 3 square meals a day.
Yeah.
51 years between the pair of you.
I know, that's horrific. Yeah.
That's terrifying, isn't it?
That's really.
Time flies, as they say. Excuse the pun.
Exactly.
Like, literally, doesn't it? Gosh.
Yes. And it certainly doesn't feel like it, to be honest. So
Yeah.
that's good things. Fun job. So yeah. I think I can honestly say I've never had that, oh, I've got to go to work feeling, which is good.
That's good, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a question they'd like to open with?
Hello, Will.
Oh,
Read back. Do we have to know what all the categories of readback are, or do you as controllers tell us that the message has got to be read back?
There's certain things that we would, expect the pilot to read back as a matter of course.
Yeah.
So things like, pressure settings, any levels, clearances, all the, there's that horrible long list of things. So all of those things we would expect, and we need most of the time for you to read back.
Yeah.
And if you don't, we'll then chase you for the response. Okay. Outside of that, anything that we want to check that you've understood, or that has sort of come across as we intended, we might just get you to confirm it. Might be that, or just an instruction to read back whatever the item is, just to check that it's been passed correctly.
Okay.
I know one that I've had recently, say, transferring via the 07 threshold. Yeah, via the runway threshold, I need the runway threshold specified just in case you go through the climb out, because nobody wants that. Yeah. So I've had to push that. I've had a couple recently for runway in use for transits.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and there's, if I can ask a quick question, sorry, jumping in there, because this comes up all the time. Hopefully I know the answer to this, so I'm not going to shout it out, but that word confirm, because what does that mean? Because I've heard pilots ask you a question about confirming, or they're trying to use confirm maybe as a way of saying yes, but it doesn't work, does it?
No, it means that we want you to, so if I said to you confirm squawk, I'd want you to check that the squawk is as we've previously arranged, or reset it if need be. So it's to just get you to confirm an item, and it may involve you checking something away from the actual radio. It might be it might be that we've spotted something that's not quite right, so maybe your level's out. So I might just say to you, confirm QNH is this and report your level. So there's an element of checking what you've got set involved in responding to the instruction.
And hopefully on ground school tonight, whilst we're all sitting in the comfort of our homes, everybody's probably thinking, well, that's obvious, isn't it? But in the air, for some reason, pilots, especially learning to fly, get confused by that. And I don't want to bust into human forms and limitations, but it's because our capacity is diminished, isn't it? And I've seen this in training many times. You know, Amanda or Helena would sort of ask you to confirm something, and one of our students would go back and say, confirm, back to you. And then they're asking you to confirm something. It's like, and then there's this tennis match goes on between the pair of you. You need to confirm. No, you confirm. No, you confirm. No, you confirm. And I said, no. They're asking you, like you've just said, they're asking you a question, and you need to reply either with a yes or no, or maybe with some details. You can't say confirm back to them.
Yes. Yeah.
This ping pong match goes on.
Yes. Yeah. It's it's not something we use, particularly often. So again, you've got the sort of novelty value as a piece of phraseology. It's not sort of day in, day out. If we were discussing the pressure setting and you had read back something incorrect, I would just say negative and transmit the correct information rather than sort of go through, are you sure you've got what I said?
Yeah, indeed. I think I'm just looking around the screen who we've got. We've got people ranging from with license to haven't necessarily particularly started yet. Half the battle with radio, I'm sure Helena and Amanda will agree, is just keeping it simple and just getting the message across and giving everybody a chance to speak, because we can only really one person speak at a time on the VHF radio, otherwise it becomes a garbled mess. And if everybody uses 10 words instead of one, it suddenly clutters up the airwaves, isn't it?
My advice, this would go to sort of the IFR crews as well. When you switch on to the frequency, give it a few seconds, see if anything's going off, because I might have given a long-winded instruction to something. I'm now waiting for the readback, and you've come in and gone, hello. And I'm still waiting, and I'll then get you to stand by and then get the readback that I need and then come back again. So always just have a quick listen out. Is anything going off? Yes, no. And then come in and say what you're after or what you'd like to do.
And when we keep it does work, doesn't it? You've got to some frequencies, maybe smaller airports, and there's a lot of chatter unnecessary, and it's endless, isn't it? It's just non-stop. But then you go on to air traffic control where it's a little bit more precise, and even though you can tell it's very busy what's going on, but there's room and space on the radio for everybody to have a go, because they're cutting out all the unnecessaries and making sure it's clear and concise.
If I can just ask on that, so when you're on a frequency which is quite busy, how do you speak without butting in? Because there's always pilots waiting to go on. How do you know when your turn is or when to ask whatever you need to ask?
So for me, if I've given an instruction and I'm waiting for a readback, once the readback has come through, to me, if you want to come in, then's your chance. But sometimes when it is busy, as you said, it's knowing when you can get in and do that. Sometimes you do just have to push in, but preferably not between instruction and readback would be my advice. But yeah, it's not always easy, especially in the summer.
And there's no actual rule or method, is there, to give everybody a hierarchy? There's nothing, is there? It's just, as you say, and then have a go.
Yeah, I mean, it's from.
Oh, Helena. Sorry, we lost you for a second there.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, back now. Yeah, back in the room.
Don't move. Yeah, there's no, we'll try and operate a sort of first come, first served kind of thing. But then we've got to prioritise after that. And if there's no, there's obviously the list of priorities. Yes. So if no sort of, emergencies or urgency going on, then everyone has equal right and is equally important. That said, we've obviously got some greater responsibilities, or some greater responsibilities towards the IFR traffic, mainly because at the end of the day they're the ones really paying our salaries, and that's what we're employed to do. Sad, but
I thought he was going to say because they can't see where they're going.
yeah, but we are employed, or our departments are employed by the airports to do a job for them. So that's sort of our primary task is to vector aircraft into that airport that has paid for our services to do that, and then everything else kind of has to slot in around that number one priority for us. So it's really deciding. And then obviously if someone wants a zone transit, I personally think they're a little bit more important than someone that just wants a basic service, so I'd maybe go to them next. So you've got to try and sort of prioritize, if you have a queue of people waiting, you've got to prioritize somehow, which is why it's handy for us when you guys make your initial call, if you just give us that little heads up as to what you want to achieve from our exchange. So whether you are inbound, whether you're looking for a zone transit, whether you just want a basic service outside. And that, again, gives us something to pin our hat on and prioritise who to go to next if there's a queue.
That is such a simple thing, isn't it? But it just cuts down two extra transmissions. If we make that first call and just say why we're calling you, you say you've already got an idea of why we've come on the radio, but otherwise we're just going to give our registration, you're going to ask us what we want, then we're going to go back to you, and suddenly, if everybody does that again, it clutters up the airwaves. Absolutely.
And as I say, it helps us to prioritise, because if I know that someone wants a zone transit and they're sort of getting close to the zone, they're sort of moving higher up the priority list to deal with, or if you just want to, I've had cases in the past where people have called up just as if they would want to maybe transit the zone or get a set. I just wanted to check my transponder. So you don't really need me at all, apart from I'll give you a number in a minute sort of thing. So yeah, giving us an idea of what you want helps us prioritise an order when it's aside from, the specified order of priorities that we've got.
Especially with the zone transit, if you call up golf, requesting basic service zone transit, I will, if I'm busy, I'll give you a squawk, then I'll tell you to stand by, I'll come back to you. At least I know where you are and I can start formulating a plan around that before I've come back for the details. So zone transit is always a key one.
Do you still find when you tell an aircraft or somebody calling to stand by, that they reply to that, or is that stopped nowadays?
50-50, I think.
Is it still 50-50?
Standing by. Oh no. Okay.
It seems not.
Still get it. Yeah, you still get it every so often, don't you?
So if anybody's confused, if you get tasked to stand by, you don't say anything after that. You just leave it and just wait.
Play again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's but yeah, generally we're just sort of, it just means that I've not finished the crossword, or I've still got some coffee to drink. I can.
And it has cropped up before. If you say standby 1, does that mean I'm number 1?
No, that's not even correct phraseology.
No, it's not.
People shouldn't say that. It doesn't mean anything. No. I think it's they're kind of implying, standby 1 minute or 1 second or whatever, but it's nonsense. It's not just standby is the phrase.
You generally don't hear that from air traffic control, but you do hear Elstree say it sometimes, and some of the others, and they say whether it's a tongue or something. Oh, just stand by a minute. Hang on a second.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you hear all sorts. Stand by. I'll be back with you shortly. Well, what does that mean? It's not really. My definition of shortly, might be at the end of the crossword, and yours might be in a second or two.
Yeah.
I'm not really doing crossword, by the way, I'm joking.
If it helps anybody, this isn't only a sort of loose rule of thumb. What I would normally do is the call I'm about to make, if I go onto a radio frequency talking to Helena or Amanda and I can hear they're busy, thinking actually it's quite a lot, I'll try and fathom out, well, how desperate am I to talk to them? I mean, I do like talking to them anyway, obviously, but if I am just asking for a basic service, I'll just wait a second. It's not imperative I call this very second. So I'll wait for it to all quieten down, and then I can pipe up and make my call. But as you say, if I'm trying to get a zone transit, I'm heading straight for your zone, and I'd ideally not like orbit, you're right to say I'll try and, without butting in too much, get the call in quick at a steady pace, obviously, but just make sure I know it's a zone transit. So they are going to sign that squawk straight away, and that does kind of work reasonably well from our side of it when flying. Think about how much you need to call them at that moment in time.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, I mean, I've been out when I was instructing out of Cranfield, sort of just up the road here now. You would be wanting to just check the QNH route, and if you're going towards to fly under the TMA. And sometimes if you're just listening in, hey presto, someone says it fairly soon. So it's so I'd often do it like that. And now, of course, you have the frequency monitoring codes where you can do it a little bit more officially and listen in. And we know that you're listening in because you selected the particular code to say that that's happening. So, like I say, and then you can pick up. It's great for your situational awareness as well. You can hear what's going on, although obviously you're not actually adding to the situational awareness of anyone else around, but you can pick up the QNH, you can pick up some weather information without even having to call in.
Does everybody here not know what we've just been talking about with a listening code, for instance?
I'd like more information if that's possible.
Yeah, of course, Tony. So yeah, Amanda or Helena, what's this listening code business all about?
Well, they've in the vicinity of controlled airspaces, and there's quite a lot of zones that have these now. It'll be on your chart as well. There'll be a frequency and an associated squawk code. It appears on the certainly the half mil chart next to the frequency and just 4 numbers in brackets. So I'm not sure what the quarter mil looks like because I haven't got one at the moment. But basically, what you would do if you were operating in the vicinity of that controlled airspace but didn't particularly want to speak to anyone, you could select the squawk code and the corresponding frequency to listen out on. And it means that I know that you're listening to the frequency. So if inadvertently you start to head towards the zone, I could draw your attention to it. I could either say traffic squawking 0013 overhead St Albans, heading north, altitude 2,000 feet. And if you think, oh, that sounds a bit like what I'm doing, you would call up Golf Hotel India Zulu's, overhead St Albans heading north. And I might say to you, Roger, Golf Zulu, the controlled airspace is 2 miles ahead of you, suggest a turn to avoid. And sometimes pilots say, yeah, I know, I was going to do it anyway. And so, and then sometimes people are quite grateful because there we've prevented them having a controlled airspace infringement and a lot of hassle, basically.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
And then once you've left the vicinity of the particular aerodrome, you can just change frequency and set your squawk back to conspicuity.
Now, we squawk 0013, and even though you haven't spoken to us, do you know our registration?
Well, if you've got a Mode Sierra transponder, our magic machine down at Swanwick can interrogate it, and it will tell us the call sign. We can just sort of we've got like a rolling ball. It's a bit like a primitive sort of mouse, so we can highlight the target, and in a separate data block we would have the call sign, aircraft ID, and all the other data that whatever the transponder is actually sending out. The more sophisticated ones give us stuff like airspeeds, rates of climb and descent, headings and all that sort of magic. The elementary ones, we might get to see just the registration, what pressure setting you've got, just that kind of basic information. But it does mean if I see a 0013 wiggling towards my zone, I can tag it, and if it's got a mode Sierra transponder, I'd be able to address that call using the registration, or anything else that you've decided to call your plane. If you decided to call yourselves Orangutan 1, that would be...
Does that help, Tony?
Definitely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I mean, we do when teaching, we encourage always talk to the radio station. Don't just think that, oh, right, great, I'll just fly around the UK just on listening squawks all the time. It's better to have that radio contact. But it's really useful. I've found it useful in the past if I'm flying nearby, and you clearly are really busy on the radio. Amanda's, busy, or Helena's busy. I can put that squawk in. At least they know I'm on the frequency already. And again, I'll just wait my turn till it's all quieting down before making a call. So I do use it as a bit of a preemptive sometimes. And then there's other places where it's almost standard practice that they don't want to talk to you. They just want you to monitor the frequency. Manchester being one of them. You go up the low-level corridor. They don't want to talk to you, so you're underneath controlled airspace. But they want you to squawk that listening squawk, so they know you're on frequency. Anybody else for a question? Yeah, go for it, Capt.
Is there anything that new pilots?
The most annoying thing that pilots do. What is it that you wish pilots would do?
Sorry, like the delay.
What a question. I'm trying to think. Life story when you're busy. And you're thinking, I'm going from, where am I going from? I'm thinking, oh no, you need to hurry up. You need to hurry up. So sometimes if you're going to come on, know what you want to say. If you don't, then don't keep your finger on the transmit switch. That for me is, especially when you're busy, we've got critical turns for the ILS, descent points, restrictions we need to make, and someone's trying to think as to what they want to say on the RT. So think about it beforehand is my advice there. That's one of my little bugbears.
To be prepared and call in when you're ready.
Exactly, yeah. Know what you want. Know what you want to say.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. How about you, Helena?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, produce this long list of... I think that's a really, really good point of just people not being prepared, so taking a bit too long, using the actual sort of speaking time as thinking time, if you like. And yeah, that can be, particularly if we have got something fairly time critical to attend to. Otherwise, no, I can't. I haven't really got something that sets my OCD going.
So, Helena, Amanda, what would your advice be? So I've come on the radio. I know what I'm going to say. I press the transmit button, give it a squeeze. I start talking, and because what I'm doing in the cockpit sometimes gets a little bit too much. Oh, there's some cloud to avoid. I kind of lost my train of thought on the radio. What should I do?
That, to me, would depend on what we've got going on around us. So if you suddenly cut off your transmission, I'll give it a few seconds. Are you going to come back in again? Yes or no? If you haven't, and I've got critical things to do, I will sort of zip around those. Then I'll come back and I'll say, Golf Zulu, just say again, or repeat last, or pass your message. Then I might come back to you in that instance if I'm busy. Otherwise, if it's gone quiet and you've thought, oh, hello, and you've lost your train of thought, just come back in again with call sign.
So from the pilot's point of view, yeah, just stop transmitting, because you've got to remember, strictly speaking, only one person can talk at a time. So if you kept your, like Amanda and Helena said, if you keep your thumb on that button, nobody else can talk. So if you've stumbled and you've got what to say, just stop, just let go. And just say the air traffic controllers will sort it out for you 9 times out of 10 and deal with.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have the ability, just say, oh, standby or disregard before you let go of the switch to let us know that you're going to sort of stop talking, and then we might come back and, as Amanda says, sort of chase you out and say, you know, you're right.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. I teach as well, of course, that although we don't necessarily do it very often, but just occasionally we need to say stand by to an air traffic controller, because maybe what you said to us is quite complicated. Like, well, I need to think about that, or something has happened in the cockpit that we've got to deal with, and it just takes a moment. So yes, we can say it back to the air traffic controllers, and they understand. You know, something's happened, or we need a moment to think about it.
Works well, yeah.
And you also use another word.
Sorry, carry on, Paul.
Use another word, disregard. You better tell us all about that one.
Oh, say you've made it also works if you think, actually, this call isn't actually going quite as well as I'd hoped. So if you think, I really wish I hadn't started this, disregard, and it means ignore everything I've sent up to this point. So if you just if you do get into this stage where you think, actually, I'm talking nonsense now, disregard, stop talking, compose yourself, and start again. No big deal.
What about if I've only said one thing wrong, though?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, if you really got lost and you think, no, I would like to start this again, that's sort of the occasion I would use it.
What about if I was giving you a position report? Golf Hotel India Zulu Zulu. I'm 5 miles north of Milton Keynes. Sorry, I meant Northampton. I could just say correction, couldn't I?
You say correction, yeah. Or if you go no, okay, we know what you mean. That's the main thing. As long as we understand what you're saying, it's always a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, you know, whatever's, obviously there are these sort of specific words that mean specific things, but at the end of the day, we understand plain English as well. So if you're ever having trouble, you know, if we're just not getting over the idea that we're meant to, we could just use conversational language, as long as it's not unambiguous, as long as it's not going to be confusing. We can just sort of speak normally.
I think that's always important to remember, because people, especially when learning, they do get quite frightened of using the radio. There is without doubt an element of stage fright.
Yeah.
Oh my God, everybody's going to be listening to me make a complete fool of myself, and you finally press that button and you can't remember there's the exact right words, and so say, well, just do the best you can in the clear as possible with the least amount of words.
Yeah,
just get the message across.
I mean, we all had to start somewhere, and Amanda and I are lucky. People pay us to do this day in, day out, so it does become normal.
Definitely.
You know, I can't stop telling people to stand by when I'm at home. On the phone, you're sort of saying to the no, just stand by, I'll be back with you. What?
I've answered the phone to the bank before and called myself radar. That totally foxed them. I thought, so it's my mobile phone. It's force of habit. So yeah,
I've not managed to do that, but
oh, you will.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's one of those things. Like I say, we all had to learn how to do it once, and it's a bit like learning a language. The more you use it, the easier it becomes, and the more familiar the words are. So it's just practice.
And if in doubt, just plain English, just ask what you want. Don't worry about the terminology. If you think we haven't understood, just say it as you normally would, like you're sat next to somebody.
Yeah. And you can always discuss it with Paul later when you're...
Can I ask, what's your thoughts about the response Wilco?
It's great. It's a great time saver.
Right.
As you were saying earlier, Sue, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That we've got that list of things that are it's mandatory to read back. Anything else you can just acknowledge with Wilco, and You know, you're telling me that you understand what I've said and you will comply with it. So anything that doesn't need a mandatory readback, Wilco's brilliant.
Yeah.
Saves a lot of time.
Thank you.
The only way, because I'm obviously teaching people from the word go, you know what I'm like.
Yeah.
Certainly to begin with, at Elstree, let's just say, I tend not to let students use Wilco to begin with, because half the time they've got no idea what they've just said to comply with.
Yes, yeah, it's not a sort of a cop out. If I say that, then I don't have to read anything back.
Yeah,
it's got to be the things that have to be checked for accuracy and correctness. We will, you know, you'd be chased if you didn't read the landing direction or the FATO direction or a pressure setting. The ground operator would come in and get you to read it back correctly.
sorry.
No.
I was going to say, if you've given us anything like a clear Wilco, that's probably not going to suffice, is it?
Thank you for that one.
So what's the difference then between Wilco and Roger? Surely they're the same things, aren't they?
I'd like to answer that. Anyone wants it? What's the definition of Roger? Or what is it, the meaning?
Understood your last transmission.
It's a good effort, but it just means I have received all of your last.
Yeah.
So there's no inference that you've understood it. There's no indication that you're going to do anything with this information. It's just that you've heard it. So it's the equivalent of me going, basically it's a radio. Oh, yeah, heard you. So, and it's only when you start to use Wilco that there's an element. Wilco means you have understood your last transmission and will comply. So that's the point at which some sort of idea of understanding and doing something with the information comes into it. So Roger's useful, you know, for things like, you know, report shutting down or, you know, advice. Something that doesn't need a mandatory readback.
According to Google, Roger is the phonetic alphabet received. So that's I've received your message. That's You're not acknowledging anything about it.
A good way to remember it. Yeah.
Yep, just received it. That's it. You do hear people still using it every now and then as if to say yes, you know, instead of a firm or Wilco.
I mean, the auspicious Capt 413 does say that it should not be used in response to a question that requires either a positive or a negative answer.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine the conversation if I say, can you maintain altitude 3,000 feet? Hey, Roger. Roger, yeah, no, Roger, no, you can't. So, you know.
Yeah, I wonder if it comes from many films. You hear them always say, Roger, Roger, don't you? Oh, Roger, Roger, yeah. I think, no, that's not quite how it works.
Some supper is being presented to me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry.
Awesome.
Yes, aren't I lucky? Yeah, it's worth the drive that I get cooked for. So it's yeah. So I'm going to have to disappear in a couple of minutes. So anything, anyone coming up for the new for a fertile exam in the near future, because the format has changed a bit.
Oh, has it? Oh, please.
So now, instead of the predetermined CAA routes in a fictitious world, they will be presented to you as an examiner. I've now had to make 6 routes in the real world, and I have to keep them all up to date and relevant. There's now guidance to good things for you guys, guidance to examiners now on particular helicopter flights. So as helicopter pilots, when you go to approach an examiner, you can tell them, I want to take my test in a helicopter, and they should have an appropriate route that will fit that class of aircraft.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, although they have extended it to balloons, which I'm still sort of getting my head around. So we're pretending that the balloon can actually go somewhere. And anyway, so it's still not very realistic, but so you would be expected to turn up to your RT test with a current chart, some pens, and also an ID. So they're getting quite insistent that we check people's ID, so passport or driving license kind of thing. After the formal CAA brief, the examiner will then reveal your route. So take me from Norwich to Bristol or wherever they're going to make you fly. And you would chalk that on your chart. And then the examiner will take you through the briefing of what they expect you to do along this route. And you would then have the usual 20 minutes to prepare who you're going to speak to. You're given the generic frequency card. So you decide who would be the most appropriate people to speak to along the route for the services you want to get as you go. The other major changes at the end, it's then sort of chatted through in a similar way to it was before. Paul can describe how the whole thing works. So it's really just that it's now more real world based. And at the end of it, there would be, there's also the facility for the examiner to do a sort of 50-minute question and answer session. Okay. So that may cover things that they weren't able to get into the route. So maybe there just wasn't a MATS to transit along the way. So they might want to talk to you, have a chat about that. Make sure you understand what to do to get through a MATS. Or it may be, something that you've actually done during the practical part of the test that they just want to delve into a little bit more deeply to make sure to check your understanding. So I think good things about it are it's much more realistic and based on sort of real world scenarios. It's a lot more up to date because the old tests were very they hadn't been updated for about 20 years, so it sort of brings it kicking and screaming to at least into the 1990s now. So.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, so I think it will be a positive thing that the whole sort of ethos behind it is to an update to try and improve standards and to try and give a bit more benefit to the student rather than just I've managed to sort of fly around a fictitious place. It's hopefully added something to the whole experience that they can take away rather than I've jumped through that hoop kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? As you say, rather than ticking the box, you can actually learn from it.
Yes, yeah.
It's far more valuable.
Marvellous. Oh, well, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to disappear. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
See you
Thank
back.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
see you in a couple of days, Amanda.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So who's got another question for Amanda?
We'll make it easy. This is my kind of level. This is good. Anything?
Yeah.
Just going to ask this a bit earlier. Just in terms of student pilots, have you noticed anything that they do quite frequently in terms of mistakes that you think they should work on?
Nothing in particular. I think everybody varies. I think it's just confidence. A lot of the time, we're not big and scary. So just come on with what you want to know. And again, if in doubt, ask. But the prefix of using the prefix of student is always a good one for us. Because otherwise sometimes we may rattle a clearance off, not faster because we're always at a steady pace, but at least if you say student, we know just to maybe go a little bit slower, be a little bit more cautious, and just make sure that everything has been understood. But nothing really generic for students that flags up for me.
At what point in the transmission would you say students?
It's normally a prefix before the call sign. Is that correct?
Yeah. Right at the beginning. At airfields, it normally suggests that the student is solo.
Yeah.
If they do a student pilot and then the call sign, everybody knows that means it's probably a solo student. But no, it's a good idea around controlled airspace if you are a student, even with your instructor, because you sometimes hear the exam prefix, don't you? So you know clearly somebody's on a test, for instance.
Yeah. That's used quite a lot, so we know in that instance. But no, the student one, again, for me also helps out, because I know just to maybe go a little bit slower, even for my standard RT pace, because we've all learnt at some point, and I know when I was training, some of the things I would say, or you just trip over things, or even if I make the transmission slightly shorter to make sure everything is understood.
See, in training, a lot of people ask me, is there some way you can practice the radio? Is there an app? Is there this? Is that? I say, well, there are aids to help, but there is no substitute from being in the aircraft, because you've got to fly it, and the quality of the radio, and you've got all of these things. It's real then.
Yeah.
And so, hence, like Matt said, we've all started something, we've all learned from somewhere.
Yeah, I've had it in the past. This was years ago, that an instructor asked me if I was busy. I said no, passing message. He said, I'm sat here with a student. Can you issue that clearance again? And I think I did it 2, maybe 3 times. So always in the same format. So you know what to expect. I'm going to give you a clearance limit, an altitude, the pressure. So it can become second nature, because of course, normally when you call on for a transit on a busy frequency, clearance given, clearance received, read back, and that's it. So you don't get a chance to practice.
Yeah, I've done that in the past. The same end when you're controlling Luton and it's relatively quiet. I've asked for a zone transit from south to north to then turn around and come back. But please treat the return as if we've only just come on the radio, to give that student that extra practice.
Again, if we're not busy, we are always happy to help. I know now the Luton airspace has changed. You'll hear that Luton radar is busier, and we'll also be using 2 frequencies more. We have opened Luton Director, which is the final director who work the departures of 07 and also sequence the inbounds onto final approach. We are a lot busier, so there will be 2 frequencies. So you may be transferred to 128.750 for transit. So that's something potentially to be aware of, because normally it would all be done on 12955. And if it's doable, we'll do that. But sometimes you may be transferred to Luton Director now. So that might be a little bit of a curveball that you've not had in the past.
So what would Luton Direct be saying to us?
So Luton Direct would basically, so if I'm Luton Radar, I've got my new stack, I'm working on a bigger range now. Luton Director will be sequencing the traffic onto final approach, doing the final approach spacing, the speeds, and giving traffic to the tower. So they know what is going on closer to the airfield. So I'd say contact Luton Director. I've given them your details. If you're looking for transit, they will issue the clearance you would normally get from me, or would have got from me in the past. Okay. So they might route you height to hold, not above 2,400 feet VFR, advised field in sight. So you will still get the standard clearance, but that controller knows the inbound traffic, any departing traffic. So that's their little world, and I'm working on a range slightly further out. So similar thing, different voice, different frequency.
So the director sort of sits between radar and tower.
The director sat right next to me.
Oh, sorry, as in, so, yeah, in the grand scheme of things.
So I will work out a general sequence, point them all in the right direction, drop them to an agreed altitude, give them to director, who will then start bringing everybody onto final approach with agreed spacing with the tower, slow everybody down and give them to Luton Tower.
See you tomorrow morning.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was going to wave, but they can't see me.
Oh, he'll come back through in a minute. I'll get him to say hello. It's Chris.
I'll wave.
He's bound to speak to you at some point in time, without a doubt.
So yeah, so no, the director's doing all the precision stuff of the speed reduction, spacing onto final, and I've just handed off the general sequence as to 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to fit in there and that kind of thing.
And if when we're ready to leave the transit, that's the right expression, what do we say?
Golf Charlie or golf requesting, I don't know how you'd say it, just leaving the frequency Elstree.
Yeah.
So just advise leaving the frequency.
Occasionally, because Elstree's a flight formation, so have you ever operated flight formation, Amanda?
No, I went to Duxford, and that was, I couldn't get my little head round it. I couldn't, I really couldn't. I'm used to issuing instructions. I can't give someone, well, you could do that. No, everything has to be pinned down with me. And I said, like, I couldn't get my head round what was being said because it was so different.
And the only, it's not a desperate downside, but the only downside of maybe teaching at Elstree is it's not air traffic control. So everything is, well, virtually everything is just information based. It's not an instruction. It's certainly not a clearance of any way, shape, or form. So consequently, sometimes when students come on to frequency with somewhere like Luton, they don't fully understand that these are going to be instructions and clearances. This is not, Amanda, just giving you some information to conduct your flight safely through controlled airspace. This is I quite often say it's a bit like you're entering into a contract, because people understand that. So if you want to break that contract, you're going to need to request to do that, and it starts to make a bit more sense then. So you need to request to enter into this contract, and you need to request to get out of it again.
Once you're inside controlled airspace, you want to do something different. I've had traffic request transit, not a problem, by the 07 threshold. They've just got north of the airfield, just gone through. We want to go southbound. You can't just do a 180. And you cannot do that. I agreed you were going to go northbound via the 07 threshold, not above a certain altitude, and you've done that. You now want to go the other way. You now have to ask me, can I go the other way? And then I will give you a clearance again. And then we've agreed that you can go the other way. And if there's any caveats attached, like you may have to hold, or inbound traffic, can you see inbound traffic, 4 mile final? There's so much going on that some transitors aren't aware of, and you think, no, you can't just turn around and go back again.
Now, when we've gone wiggling towards your airspace and we've just crossed into that into your zone, and you suddenly say to us radar control, what does that mean?
Radar control basically means you have to adhere to any instructions that I give you. So I might ask you to hold position. You can't just randomly go off and do what you'd like to. I've given you a clearance. I expect you to adhere to that clearance. If you're unable to adhere to that clearance, you need to say, I'm unable to do this, requesting, and then it's like a contract. I will then give you an amendment to that. But yeah, radar control, you're inside my airspace, you're subject to radar control. You need to do as I say. And if you're unable to, it's like I'll say, advise if unable to maintain BMC. I need you to know, if you suddenly go IFR, that's a whole different clearance and a whole different level of separation that I have to ensure, or even special VFR, I need to ensure separation against inbound traffic. It's a minefield of changes.
And in single engine helicopters going into the cloud, we all know that's really actually an incredibly bad idea. That's so if you have been given a clearance that does seem to take you straight towards the cloud, you need to pipe up and say straight away that you can't do this, and Amanda will offer something different that you can do to keep you clear of that.
If I know from the outset that it's a possibility, and I had that a few months ago, I issue a VFR clearance, it may not be possible. That gives me a chance to, say you want to go via the overhead, that gives me a chance to speak to the tower. If they have traffic to go, I will take you away or offer you a route away from the airfield. because if you suddenly go IMC and there's departing traffic, I need 3 miles or 1,000 feet. And if I can't ensure that, I can't give you that clearance. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. If Tower don't have anything, I can put what's called a check all on, which means anything the Tower want to depart is release subject radar. They need to ring me and request release. So the airspace is mine. I know nothing's going to depart, and I can give you that clearance, knowing that if you did go IMC, it would then become an IFR clearance, and the altitude would have to be in a agreement with the set levels that I have. But yeah, it can get very complicated very quickly if there's anything inbound or outbound, if that made any sense.
I think so. Who else? Who's got another question for Amanda?
Stunned silence.
How clearly can you hear us when we're on the radio, Amanda?
They're normally very clear. Readability 4 or 5. Some people forget to put their boom mic in front of their face. I've done that. That's always a teller, but it's not. Everyone's normally quite clear. I know the low-level coverage off to the west of Luton, the RT coverage, isn't the best out there. But no, everyone's normally very clear.
That's good, because that's obviously from in the cockpit. You've got no idea exactly how well
no.
Amanda can hear us.
If we do struggle, we will normally say it. To me, if you're readability 3 or below, I will say something, or if you're intermittent or anything along those lines. But traffic out of Elstree, normally very clear.
Thanks, James. And Amanda, what do you mean by readability 3? Just in case somebody's wondering.
Oh, I can't remember the technical term for that. Readability 5, you're very clear. Readability 3 to me might be I'm having to listen a little bit more, but you're still readable. Again, I don't know the specific definitions, I'm afraid. Readability 2, I'm struggling. Readability 1, I can barely hear you. And if that's the case, I may just reiterate, remain outside controlled airspace. Because if the RT is that bad, I'm not going to be able to get a legible read back. Yeah. And ensure you're going to do what I want you to do, what I expect you to do. So
we've got that scale, haven't we, of 1 to 5, as you say, 1 being, well, diabolical, I can't really understand the word, whoever's just transmitted, 3 to 5, where you're, lovely and clear and perfectly legible. And again, from our point of view, don't forget, we can also say that back to Amanda, because we might be crystal clear, but if she might not be coming across very clearly because of interference or cockpit noise or whatever, so we can always just let her know that she's readability 4 or even 3 maybe, and she'll know to speak up and just be a bit clearer because we're struggling to hear it.
I know we've had it recently, again, especially in bouts of high pressure. You can get breakthrough from other countries that we don't hear traffic. I think one frequency had the French breaking through recently. We don't hear that, but of course you guys will. Yeah, we hear it crystal clear at Elstree some days. It is as if they're sitting next to you in the cockpit. Somebody French speaking in your headset. It is unbelievably clear. Really? You wouldn't believe it. Yeah, it bounces back in the atmosphere and stuff. It catches you out the first time you hear it. It's like, what? Yeah, indeed. And all of this sort of stuff, just when we sometimes say about how readable we are, it's just to try and set the scene so we can make sure we can have clear communication, isn't there? So if we can have clear communication, we can do less, and once again it takes less time on the radio and everybody gets a go and it all works quite well. Something that oh gosh, let's just come back in. Something that I come across when take people down the heli lanes for the first time is they think it's going to be incredibly busy, incredibly complicated. And I say, no, actually it's really simple usually, because it's all controlled airspace through there and it's very well done. And it's not that difficult. As long as you listen, you know what you're going to say, you don't keep mucking people around. It's usually very easy and straightforward. Whereas when you fly to a small little airfield that's maybe just a air-ground, a radio, it can actually be really complicated because there's sometimes some very non-standard RT and things you won't usually hear. And of course, it's not instructional. It's barely, it's just information.
and it can actually be harder sometimes than it is at a bigger airport or control.
That's what I struggled with at Duxford. I was listening to what they were saying. I'm thinking, but no, because I am used to issuing instructions. It was, could you say that? Again, it was a different world, a totally different world, and again, very non-standard. I'm used to very regimented, knowing what I can say, what I can't say, what I shouldn't say. But again, there's nothing stopping you just using plain English. If you aren't sure, just ask and say what you're thinking. If you can't think of the air traffic words, if you like.
So Amanda, I know it's cropped up in previous ground schools, but how much grief is it if somebody just accidentally wanders into your airspace, especially if they're not talking to you?
If you are busy and someone accidentally, let's take Luton for example, and you accidentally wander in the vicinity of Stevenage, you're underneath a 7-mile final. At that point, I don't know who you are. I don't know your intentions, you're unknown traffic. So that is my cue. If I have traffic on a base leg that I'm heading towards you, I'm having to stop them off, potentially give avoiding action. I then have to start holding everybody off. If you're heading for Luton, I then have to ring the tower and potentially stop departures. Again, because we don't know where you're going or what you're doing, it can escalate very, very quickly. And airborne holding can start pretty rapidly, and that can back up because we don't know how long you're going to be there for. If someone's sort of just stooging about in the Luton zone for 5, 6, 7 minutes, that is a long time in air traffic.
And just out of my own curiosity, how much paperwork does that cause you, or administration? From
our side, of course, as soon as it happens, we're making notes, the times, the call signs. So I would have to file an MOR because of it's an infringement of controlled airspace. That's the paperwork I will do. If there has been a loss of separation for the controller, I will then be relieved. I will potentially be suspended pending an investigation to see what the separation loss was, see what actions I took, and if everyone was happy, and also if I'm happy, whether to plug back in again. So where it could just be someone thinks they just sort of clipped controlled airspace, again, it's the MOR, it's the controller being taken out of radar and replays having to be pulled, the RT having to be pulled. It can be a lot of work. So
it sounds like, to summarise, yeah, chaotic and
yeah, totally, yeah,
and just grief that you don't need. And this is why we do teach. Please, if you're going to fly anywhere close to these places, just talk to them.
If you call up for basic service, or is it the frequency monitoring codes? So for Luton, it's 0013. If we see you heading towards controlled airspace, we're not obliged to say anything, but most controllers, if they get the chance and if they see it, they will say something. I think you're heading for my airspace, just be advised, controlled airspace in half a mile. And a lot of the time you go, oh, really, thank you. So disaster averted, rather than once they've entered, then the paperwork.
I don't think, I mean, they're getting better because it's been published and put out a lot now, but pilots, I just don't think are aware of the chaos and the carnage that's caused, even just clipping controlled airspace. It's a real, it causes major headaches and problems. And oh gosh, I mean, if you did it to somewhere like Heathrow, where they're landing every 45 seconds or whatever it is, like, the chaos is unbelievable, and the backlog and the delays and the expense, and just by a simple little mistake that could have been averted. And it might be a genuine mistake that somebody's just got a bit lost and uncertain their position, but they know they're kind of vaguely close to somewhere like Heathrow. If you just call them up, it can save a whole lot of problems. But we're getting far better in the industry in teaching people that now. That old way. There used to be, when I've said this before on ground school, when I learned to fly, I can still remember some instructors saying, no, turn the transponder off because they'll see where you are. Don't talk to them, because if you go in their airspace, you'll get in trouble. And it was literally taught like that. It was the complete opposite to what we teach. It was incredible.
When I did my flying training, I did 15 hours out of Booker. I have never been so scared, I have to admit. That's why I'm a controller and I don't fly. But it was, again, getting close to controlled airspace. No, if in doubt, talk to us. At least if you're talking to someone, we can tell you where you are. And point you in the right direction or advise you of what you need to do to avoid controlled airspace.
So what would we do, Amanda? Use your call sign and then ours and say, I think I'm near your space, or I'm lost, or...
Yeah. If you think I'm unsure of my position, I think I'm lost, I will give you a squawk. Then I can give you a position report. There's always D&D as well on 1215. They're brilliant at locating people and helping people regain their situational awareness. But it doesn't matter who you talk to, just speak to any radar unit, they will give you a squawk, and then we can make the phone calls in the background to other units if you're going to be close to their airspace. At least that way you're known traffic to us. We've got you identified, we know who you are.
Yeah.
And we can always issue a clearance into controlled airspace. And that's the difference between you coming in, you've been cleared into controlled airspace, and you haven't infringed.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky around in the south because almost everywhere we go, we're on somebody's radar. So you've only got to talk to someone and they can find you. And it's a very useful, powerful tool. I mean, if you do get a bit uncertain in your position, i.e. lost, you just pipe up and ask somebody like Amanda on one of those frequencies. They're certainly not going to turn you away. Well, they certainly shouldn't do. They will help you because they know what it can lead to. It could lead to an infringement, or worst case scenario, it could lead to an accident because you've been consumed by being lost. But if they help and guide you, they can get you back on track, and everybody's a winner.
And then that's getting past ego, isn't it? Of, can I actually say I'm lost?
Yeah.
We have very specific phrasing for that. We're never lost. We're just temporarily uncertain of our position.
We like that.